Hey, welcome to another typology interview. We have Janam. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you doing, Benjamin?
Good. Yeah, doing good. So you're from Belgium, born and raised, you
Yeah.
were telling me? Yeah. And then you went
Yeah.
to the
Born and raised.
US. Your English is really amazing. You've been there for like 10 years. You did grad school in electrical engineering. So you have a
Yeah.
PhD in electrical. Yeah.
Undergraduate
Right.
as well. Electrical engineering, also in the
Oh,
U.S.
undergrad and grad school. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So like that's pretty far away from typology. So how did you get started in typology?
Oh, how? I think I was just kind of curious, like how people work.
Right.
Um, like there's a point in my life, like towards the end of grad school, where I was like, okay, I
Sorry,
kind
it's
of
just
really
spoken like a true engineer, how people work. Like,
right, yeah. And so I was like, I was like at a point towards the end of grad school, I was like, okay, like I kind of need to like start figuring this stuff out a bit more.
right.
Um, and so I started, yeah, like I think it was like it's like I remember seeing some of those like personality stuff about Myers-Briggs, and I wasn't really sure what to make of it. But then I kind of got into it. I also started getting into a little bit more like Jordan Peterson as well.
Okay.
Like he
Yeah.
was like, really big for like a year. I don't know what happened to him, but like at least for a year he was like there's lectures on like the Bible, like the Genesis and other like Old
Okay.
Testament books, super popular. So like I was really into it, and then he would talk about Carl Jung, and then I remembered like wait, yeah, Carl Jung, like Myers Briggs, like and so I got a little bit more into Carl Jung, got a little bit more into like the functions, and then like
Hmm.
somehow found like Dave's channel, and I think I watched some of his
Yeah.
older where basically he's actually wrong because he's like following the Myers Briggs
Well, I
type.
think he's still right. Like I rewatched some of that stuff, and it seems like it's still right. Everything he was
Is
saying.
it okay?
Yeah, it still holds true,
Okay.
even to with his own system right now. Yeah. Pretty
Okay,
interesting.
cool. Yeah, yeah. I was just going off of what he said because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember he said like some of his older videos aren't really that accurate anymore. But yeah, and then like I saw his stuff about I think the single observer, single decider, and like how they look at things, and I was like,
Right.
wow, this seems super legit. Like this seems like this actually made sense to me. So I was like, then I got
Okay.
more into it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So you were typed. I don't know your type yet, so we'll figure that out as we go. But yeah, I didn't really even get a baseline, but I'm getting a high blast from you for some reason. Pretty high.
Yeah, it's not last.
Yeah, it's not
So
last. So I think
right,
it's Savior. It's either first or second. No.
it's actually third, or at least that's what I
Third.
was typed at. But
Right.
yeah, so
Interesting. Yeah. Are you some variant of a TI?
yeah, actually,
Yeah.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like masculine TI, and it's like
Oh,
also a
okay.
third.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
It's like yeah.
And is it your first function, your TI then?
No, it's my third actually.
It's your third
So
function. Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I was actually talking to Shannon about it on the phone as well, because I said like, well, I don't really get how I can have T like third, and
Yeah.
like she kind of pointed out, it's like because it's masculine, it comes across as very punchy, or like it's actually pretty prevalent, right? So it's like I think they had a video a couple of weeks ago as well, where it's like if you have a demon function that's masculine, it can kind of show up or
Right.
seem like because it's like so strong.
Right.
Um, and Dave kind of pointed out as well, where it said like like since you have masculine TI, like it would help you like do well in engineering and whatnot, even though it's like third and not like a savior.
Uh-huh.
So
So like
yeah,
just from telling me that TI was third and Blast is not your top is third. So I know right away your play consume Blast.
yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just from those two pieces of information.
is that true?
Um,
Okay, that's very cool.
yeah. And that also would make you a double decider.
Yep, yep,
Yeah. And so your lead function I'm gonna have to figure out, but your second function is gonna be FE,
yeah,
feminine. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. And then I'm getting masculine sensory for some reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then that's about all. But like I couldn't really tell if you're doing NE or whatever. So
Oh,
um
okay. Yeah.
but I'm thinking maybe NE.
No.
No, SE. SE
Yeah,
FE. Yeah.
yeah. SESP. There you go.
Cool. So yeah, we're on the same function stack, you and I.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah,
Are
ISTP.
you
Yeah,
your ISTP? Okay, so that would be I always forget what those are. So it's like
TISE.
TISE. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Um, so you would have sleep last as well,
Yeah,
right?
which is funny because I did type myself at
Sleep
some point as
first.
having sleep first. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I was like, oh yeah, I definitely rest a lot, and it's like I need sleep, and I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Right. And that would put you as info dominant. Do you resonate with that too?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty balanced with the information of like consuming and being able to blast it, but then tend to like have really hard times with the energy stuff where it's like I'm either going really, really hard and basically at some point I just crash,
Hmm.
or I'm like relaxing and then feeling very, very uncomfortable because like I want to do stuff.
Yeah,
So
you got stuff to do. Yeah.
yeah, like for example, so I finished grad school last year.
Mhm.
And I had a bit of money saved up, so I was like, okay, let me go travel and just explore for a year and basically just do nothing. And so I did that for about 3 4 months, and then I got really really bored because I was just like, I'm not actually doing anything productive or
Right.
like anything useful. I'm just like getting on a plane, walking around, and then when I get home I just watch cartoons basically. And so
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, I have a hard time with just relaxing, just sitting
Interesting.
there.
Interesting.
So
Do you see yourself as well as like, do you like that tribe validation? Is that something you look for?
yeah, very much so. That
Yeah.
one, yeah. So when I got type, a couple of things that I did type myself right at, because I didn't get everything right. I actually got most stuff wrong, but I did get like tribe over self.
Right.
That one I had. I could see myself on the NT versus NT-SF axis instead of
Hmm.
like the ST-NF axis. And I did pick up on the fact that I had somewhere ST and NI, but I had them flipped. So I thought I was like NI first and then
Right.
the last. Turns out it's like the other way.
Uh-huh.
So which I thought was interesting because one thing I realized like for myself is that the better I understand one of these things in the objective personality system, right? Like tribe versus self, or what is SC, what is SI.
Right.
Uh, the more the actual, I was actually accurate about that, but the stuff that I didn't understand, I consistently just like type myself upside down,
Huh.
right? So I didn't really understand sexualities that well, and so I
Right.
was like, oh, like based on what I think, maybe I'm like FM for FM, right? So feminine, masculine. And they were like, no, no, upside down, like MF,
Hmm.
right? And I was like, oh, maybe I'm like NI and not SC. And it's like, no, no, upside down. Like SC is first, NI is last.
Yeah.
So I noticed like the things I actually understood, I could type myself well. The things I was kind of like, I didn't actually get right, I didn't understand well. Like I would just type myself upside down.
So was it hard for you to bucker down and choose electrical engineering out of, and like even a thesis and like narrow yourself into
Yeah,
one direction?
right. So that's a good question. So I kind of cheated a bit. So what I mean is like, so when I was in high school, and elementary school, like I really really liked math and physics, and that might be because of the masculine TI, right?
Right.
Uh, but I was like really good at it. I understood it, and yeah, when I went to college, my first year, I was actually a civil engineer, and then I had an internship the summer after my freshman year, and it was like a 12-week internship. 3 days in, I'm like, I'm fucking bored. Like, I don't like this. Or like,
Right.
yeah, maybe like a week in, I was like, I'm not doing this for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And then a couple weeks later, I was like, oh man, I got to figure out something else to do. And so throughout the internship, I mean, I had fun, but like, I knew like I didn't want to be a civil engineer. I was looking
Uh-huh.
at other engineering fields. I ended up with electrical because that one actually seemed cool. It actually seemed fun. And then yeah, when I was an electrical engineer, like when I was going through my classes in undergrad, like I never really like picked like a particular subfield. Like I just like took classes in every type of subfield there is in electrical engineering, right? So like electrical engineering itself is like super broad. So you can go from like the physics. So I actually minored in physics, and I did my research in like optics for like a semester, and then like nanotech for a semester, and then like material science
Oh
for
yeah.
a summer, right? And they're kind of like somewhat similar, but it was always
Yeah, they
like a
are for
slightly
sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
different project. And then I also was taking classes in signal processing and system controls. And
Yeah.
then like analog as well, and like I taken like programming classes. So even
I'm
though
getting your
like
SE now. I'm getting
yeah,
your SE.
so,
You're giving me all of the SE. Yeah.
right. So even though like I was like an electrical engineer, it wasn't that like for those 4 years like undergrad, I was only focusing on one thing. And
Right.
one of the reasons I really like college actually, and I know like most people are like, oh, I hated school when I was younger. I didn't like school. I loved it because like every semester there were like different classes, different subjects, and it was something completely new. Like it's
Right.
very rare that I was like, okay, I'm taking this class and this is like, like signal processing class number 4. It's more like
Mm-hmm.
at most I would do class number 2, right? So basic signal processing and then advanced signal processing, and that was kind
Right.
of it. Um, and then in grad school, yeah, so that was actually a really tough time in life. And actually, that's actually the part of life that I talked about in my typing video, where I
Right.
was like, in grad school, and I had a really hard time. I didn't like research because I actually did have to pick one thing. I did have to pick one
One thing for your
project,
grad school. Yeah. Yeah.
and I got bored extremely hard, especially because I actually this is why I thought I was like NI, or at least like not sensory, because I was in lab all the time, and I was like, oh yeah, lab. There's so much sensory stuff,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like overwhelmed. But it was I think that I don't know, maybe that's like SC
We'll
anxiety.
get to it. Yeah. We'll figure it out. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
bigger thing was really that after like 6 months, I was just like, there's this process I have to do to prepare my samples to clean it.
Right.
It's like silicon. So I did my research on solar panels,
Uh-huh.
and it was like it's like silicon based. So
Yeah.
silicon, like you kind of have to go through this entire process to clean it. And I basically would have to do it every week, or at least like a lot of times during the week, and I hated it because it was like the same shit
Same.
over
Yeah.
and
Same procedure. Even all of the
over.
steps when you're making a
Right,
solar cell are
exactly. And it's
exactly
like,
the
it's
same.
like
Like, okay,
right, and it's
etching. Okay, now you do the masking, and now you do. Yeah.
right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So you know about this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, yeah, exactly. The etching, the masking, like dipping in water, dipping in like hydrofluoric acid. It's
Yeah.
like, and it's the same over and over again, and it takes like 3-4 hours, right? And even the rest of the process, which was like depositing metals, etching off
Right.
like contacts, doing the measurements. After a certain point, it was like so much of it was just the same stuff.
Right.
And the reality was the thing I did like was like getting the results, right? Like when I got the results, I was like, this is something new that I
It's
can like
new. You
think
can
about
interpret
it.
it now. Yeah.
Right. But it's like it would take me like maybe a week, 2 weeks to get like one really nice data plot.
Uh-huh.
Right. And it was so frustrating to a point where I didn't actually realize that I was doing this until until I got typed, like when I got typed, I thought I was NI, and I was like, okay, let me play devil's advocate and try to see if I can agree with Dave and Shannon's typing of me, and be like, okay, can I prove to myself that yeah, I do have this like SE gathering habit. And I
Right.
started writing out every year I was in grad school and all the stuff I would do, right? Outside of research. And I was just like, holy shit, I kept distracting myself with new stuff, with other things, to not get bored. So like I was like part of a dance team for like 3-4 years. And I was like, like 10, 12 hours of practice. Like my third year was like intense. I don't know what, like, and I think this was literally probably because I was bored or whatever, but I was doing research. I was part of this dance team. I decided to volunteer for my fraternity on a national level, which was also like something like a part-time job. And then I like volunteered as well to like TA, like be a teaching assistant for a class that was for like the intro electrical engineering class for sophomores. And it was like a really intense class, not just for them, but also for the teaching assistants, because we kind of basically had to do all the work. So I was doing all this stuff. And, like the reality is like I had a lot of fun doing it, but it was also super stressful. There's like a lot. And so I was like just writing stuff out like that for all 7 years of grad school. And I was like, man, you know what? It's true. Like I get bored of research or something else, and I try to like just find like another thing to do and another thing to do. So that at some point I just have like a really overwhelmed schedule, but at least I'm like not bored, or at least like I don't feel dull, like dull moment, and I'm like constantly doing stuff. To a point where I'm actually doing this right now, where like right now I technically have 2 full-time jobs and I'm like balancing them out. Uh, and I'm just like, yeah, okay. And then I was like, and then I told Shannon like, yeah, okay, I see it now. It's like,
Yeah. Well, okay. So what just happened here is like I think this blast might be second. I don't know. I'm trying to think because like
okay,
yeah, because like you just took the question and you just started going. You ramped up. Like that's not
right.
demon blast. Yeah. That's like,
Okay, yeah, it's a possibility. Like I
or maybe
think,
it's nervousness. I don't know. But that's
no,
like
I
some
think
crazy blast you got going.
okay, gotcha. Yeah, you could be right. I think one of the things is like Yeah, it's like the typing video is only like an hour, right?
Right.
So maybe like they definitely said like you're not blast last, and you're pretty balanced between the blast and the consume. So
Right.
I think they kind of just said like, okay, like yeah, play, consume, blast, sleep, or maybe it's like play, blast, consume, sleep.
Oh, they
I'm
said
not
that
sure.
too.
Well, they didn't say that, but I think like they were like they weren't 100% sure about
Uh-huh.
the animals in the middle so much, right? Because it was like they couldn't really pick it up. All they
Right.
could really say was,
Play,
I'm
play
not blast last.
consume. You should just be a consume monster. You should just be all your day just trying to take in more information. Like,
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
I do read a lot, so
yeah,
like I mean I can see myself like yeah actually consuming a lot, but obviously that's like me looking at myself,
right,
which
yeah.
might it's like usually better to like let other people look at me and be like, all right, here's what you actually do.
Tell me,
Uh,
what about when you're learning something? Does it take you a long time to study and get the concepts down? Like, or do the concepts come to you quite quick?
um,
Like in high school physics, for example.
yeah, no, actually that took me a lot of time to study. So like I wasn't necessarily like naturally good at it. Like there were certain things that like I wasn't sure if I was dumb or other people like just were bullshitting or whatever. But there were certain concepts like other kids were like, yeah, I got it, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, I didn't see how like you got that. So I would have to spend time to like actually get really good.
Right.
So like, for example, like my last year in high school, like there's like I think this is actually like in all countries like they have like national physics olympiads, right? And
Yeah.
then if you do well, you go to international one. And like I ended up getting being a finalist
Yeah.
for the national physics olympiad. But like I actually spent a fuck ton of time like
Yeah. So this is one thing that I
practicing.
see in lead SE. It's one thing that I really see is that, like, especially if you're double gathering like that, that you don't have a problem putting in all of the work and effort to get those concepts. Like you'll just go and you'll do it, and then it'll
Right,
be a hell of a lot of work. But in the end, once you get that concept, you'll be so much better than anyone who's lead N. You'll
right,
like
yeah, exactly.
have it so solid and so fixed. No, and it's based on so many data points that you understand it better than anyone else.
Right, exactly. There's like no, it's like this, I think you might be right because I'm like processing this stuff as well right now. But
Right.
it's like yeah, one example is so I remember in high school, like like the teacher, he had this concept of like Newton's laws of physics, and it was like with these train trucks, right? And it's like if one pushes on the other, then the other one pushes back.
Right.
And I was like, first, I don't like, I feel a little bit embarrassed saying it, but I was like, man, I do not. I remember that was not intuitive to me. I was like, I did not get that because I was like, how, like,
Uh-huh.
like you're the one putting force on something. How is it putting force back onto you,
Right.
right? When they're not actively doing it. And I actually had to like go through. Yeah, I spent a lot of time at home, like doing the problem sets, and trying to understand how to like solve these like complex problems based on that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then finally like when I got it like yeah like I like I had like in the semifinals like for the physics olympiad I had like the second highest score or the first the
Nice.
highest score in the country. So
Yeah.
and then I bombed it on the final, but that's a different story. It's like
Right.
but yeah like
So,
yeah no it's
so when
like
you're like solving those problems, would you have to relate it to a process and the procedure, or like to a past problem you've done, or you have the concept and you can just apply it?
I have to break it down, right? So it's like
Okay.
again like for example uh like uh like junior year in college like I took like electromagnetism like the advanced course,
Yeah.
and like you basically learn like Maxwell's
Maxwell's
force,
equations. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And like you do it like in very advanced form, so it's not like as simple as like introductory physics courses.
Yeah.
And I basically like for every law I basically had to like write it down, imagine the law in my head, like how does it actually work, and like right like actually do a couple of problems, and then I
Right.
finally got it, and then I was like, okay, now I actually see it in my head, now it all makes sense, and I
Uh-huh.
ended up like dominating all my classes, especially that class as well, because I was like a notorious class for failing students, but like I just like crushed it because like yeah, once I put in the work, once I really understood the concept, it was like it was easy for me to apply it to everything else. But it didn't come naturally. It wasn't like I
Yeah.
saw like I saw the equation and I was like, oh yeah, I totally get it. Like it
Right.
was
Yeah.
more wait, let me like I actually used to do this a lot. It's like, let me break down every letter in the equation. And like, what happens like if I change this letter, right? Like what does it change? How does it change everything else?
Wow. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Good for you.
yeah.
See, so you're
So
seeing the little sensory differences and seeing how it affects the whole. Yeah. Good for you.
right, exactly. So
Yeah.
like yeah, like you said, like a lot of data, right? So like for example, Maxwell's first law is like about like it's like the
What's the
electric
first one?
field.
Faraday? Or
It's like I always forget the names, but
yeah.
like but it's
Isn't they're
it's a
not
one
his
where
laws? You just put them together.
right. It's
Yeah.
really just like it's like when you integrate the electric field over a closed surface, you get the
Div,
electric charge inside. So that could be
div
fair
or
to say.
curl?
Sorry.
Div or curl?
Oh man.
We'll look it up after. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
the first
we can
one.
look it up after. But basically, like it's like I always thought as like if you have like a point charge, right, and you go really far away,
Right,
and you basically integrate over the sphere, and then
right.
it's like epsilon electric field, and you get like the charge. And
You
so
get the
once I
charge.
saw that in my head, I saw it with like a point charge, a line like a infinite line charge, like a plane charge. I was like, okay, I can do this for like any shape of
Nice.
electric charges. But like yeah,
So
the
you
first
got
time I
the
saw it, I was
concept.
like,
You got the
yeah,
concept in the end, right?
right.
Based on
Like
all
the
of
first
the
time I
edge
saw it,
cases, you had to go through all of the sensory cases, and then in the end, you got
yeah,
the concept.
right, exactly.
Cool.
So
Yeah. So like someone who had a higher N would, get the concept and then try to apply it to the sensory cases afterwards. Right.
gotcha. Yeah, no, I definitely had to like put in the time and effort to do my
Yeah.
problem set and like
Yeah. That's cool though.
get
It's
it.
cool that you did
So,
it. Um, do you? What about planning for the future and like how far ahead do you plan? Like, did you know what you were going to do when you went to the U.S.? Did you know you were going to go to grad school? Do you know like?
yeah, it's a good question. So I don't know if I actually really plan further than a year. I mean, I think I like to think like, oh yeah, like here's where I want to be in 10 years, but like I definitely don't ever end up being where I thought I was going to be in 10 years. So like, yeah, it's okay. So, when I was like in high school, I think I watched a lot of American television. I was like, yeah, America, definitely want to go there. Seems like a great place. Seems like a lot of fun. Seems more fun than Belgium.
Right.
And so I applied to colleges, um, in the U.S. and it was basically just based off the top 10 engineering ranking list on U.S. News or U.S. Today in the U.S. News. Yeah. Uh, and I got accepted to a few, and I just ended up going to the one that basically was like the highest rank and like giving the best scholarship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like very like here, like because I do see some people, right, especially in the U.S. They're like, here's the university I want to go to. That's the only school I want to go to, and like
Yeah.
I'm gonna plan 5 years ahead. And and I don't know if that's me being SE or me just being in Belgium, because in Belgium we don't have application processes for universities, right? So because it's such a small country, like if you do well at a recognized high school, you can kind of just go to basically to any university you want. There's no real prestige differences, right? So there's not that much planning going on as is. But anyway, so I got to college. Yeah, I thought I was going to be a civil engineer. Year later, I was like in electrical engineering. I remember when I was in high school, senior year. Senior year, we were getting the talk from our teachers, right, about like college and what it implies, and none of this was relevant to the U.S. because we were talking about Belgian schools, and they were like, yeah, you do your 3-year bachelor, and then you get your master's, and if you want, then you can get a PhD. And I was sitting there, be like, fuck all of that. I'm just gonna get my bachelor's. There's no way in hell I'm gonna go get a master's. Sorry, yeah, I'm just gonna get my bachelor's. No way in hell I'm gonna get a master's. Definitely not gonna do a PhD. Okay, 2 years into college, like start of junior year, I'm like, yeah, I totally want to do a PhD.
Right. Yeah.
But, like, yeah, it changed.
Yeah.
It changed pretty fast.
I could even see a lead NI doing that too. It's not.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
maybe that's not too indicative. And then
Yeah.
I did plan for grad school. I think I think you kind of have to a bit like that. Especially when you're applying to PhD programs, it's not something you can do last minute. But yeah, it's a little bit tough for me to say because like
What
I
are your
think I can
plans for tomorrow? What are your plans for next week, for next year?
plan for tomorrow. I think I wrote this down somewhere.
Oh, really? You're working on your demons.
Yeah. So plans for tomorrow. So I work for this tech startup, and so I kind of have to like update a guide for like our users to like do like something. Plans for next week. Like next week, Monday I gotta go get into London. And I kind of have some like job stuff going on there. And then Tuesday,
This is stuff you were told to do, or this is stuff that you planned yourself?
this stuff I plan myself, and
Right.
then
Okay.
yeah, Monday I get in. Like I just take I'm just relaxing Monday. Tuesday I have like a job event. Wednesday morning I fly out of London to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam to LA for like a religious conference. That one, okay, that was funny because like I actually planned my Amsterdam to Los Angeles flight first, and then I realized I had this job thing, so I kind of had to figure out how to like get back from London on time to like
Uh-huh.
Amsterdam, and I figured it out. So KLM, great airlines, they were able to like link my two flights and make it all happen. So like, all right, awesome. But so yeah, that's next week. Next
Is it
year,
scary to do that planning? Like, is it scary that you'll screw it up or?
no, no. I think for me, like the scariest part is usually like when other people can get involved because they can sometimes mess stuff up. Like, right. So like for example, this KLM stuff, I actually called them and I asked them like, hey, so I have a flight from Amsterdam to LA. But the day before, I might be in London. Is there any way I can like take the earliest flight from London to Amsterdam and connect it to my Amsterdam to LA flight? So I called them up and they're like, yeah, that's totally fine. You know, we can just like link it on like on the online system. You should be good to go. You got enough
Nice.
time. Okay, so I booked my flight from London to Amsterdam, and then I called them and they said like, oh, we actually can't because like like your baggage might not get there on time. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of pissed because like I already booked like my hotel ticket in London and my train from like to London as well. So I had to cancel that, get a different flight that comes in that like comes into Amsterdam earlier. And so I emailed KLM again to be like, can you just refund me? Because like you guys kind of like technically lied to me. This is actually your fault. And then they were like, sure. And then they only give me like a half refund. And I said like, this there's a little bit of BS because like again like this is your fault. And they're like, oh, actually, sorry, sir. Like we can link your flights. It's not a problem. We can make sure your baggage get from one flight to the other. And I was like, are you fucking? And so they were able to figure it all out. But I was just like, oh man, like yeah,
Yeah.
whenever there's stuff like that where like
Was that like a freak out tidal wave sort of thing?
yeah it was I was really really mad like because I was like I already had everything planned out and like these guys like said like okay you can actually link these two flights and I was like sure fine kind of sucks but I spent like 2 hours finding a different flight and which leaves from a different airport in London and like book like figuring out like okay how do I get there from my hotel room to that airport on time and then like figuring out like okay am I actually going to make this in Amsterdam because there's actually different airlines that I actually have to go through customs pick up my bag and then like go back and check in again and then especially because it's a flight to the US which takes more time so I was a little bit stressed out about that and then KLM said like oh dude it's totally fine you didn't have to cancel we could have just linked your flights and I'm like
Yeah.
are you fucking serious? Like, it's like, so
Yeah.
now it's all good. But I was definitely super mad, like really mad.
Right.
So
So yeah, like you haven't really talked about people at all this whole time. A little bit
yeah,
about your friends.
okay.
Like, do you have any tidal waves with people at all, or you're completely balanced self and tribe?
Relatively balanced, self and tribe. Sometimes I do, but it's more like yeah, okay. So it's like I get into arguments when I'm part of an organization and I don't agree with like how say the leadership is doing stuff.
Okay.
So that's usually like, and I think that's maybe because like I'm like, I feel like we can do so much better. We can have higher expectations, and like achieve more. And I always feel like other people are just like, we're like good how we are, and I'm like
Right.
man, do you want to strive for more? And so
Uh-huh.
sometimes there's like this like there's often a difference in like my expectations versus their expectations, and like um, and also in terms of like how people should behave as well. But like
It sounds like
so yeah,
your masculine TI is it's a bit
yeah.
it gets triggered a little bit. Yeah.
Think so too. That's what Shannon said too. Because I actually asked her. I was like, because I got typed the same as Cherry Crews and Kevin Hart,
Hmm.
and I told Shannon this. I'm like, I don't believe it because those guys are so cool. They're so chill. Everyone gets along with them. And she was like, actually, they're both. So they can be argumentative when they feel it's like important.
Yeah.
So like because I actually told her like like I do feel like I had a hard time like seeing myself as an SF because I'm like, yeah, but like when I get into a fight with people, I get into pretty big fights. Like these aren't like small things where it's like, okay, we just let's agree to disagree. It's like, no, you're wrong. You're just completely wrong. and you need to change your mind. And she was like, yeah, that's like, yeah, masculine TI. It's like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of a demon state too.
yeah. So yeah, it's not a consistent thing. It's really more like, so I actually have this like in my fraternity, and you know, the guys kind of joke about like my yearly meltdown or like my yearly fight. So it's definitely like not a consistent thing. It's just like it just builds up, and then
Yeah.
once a year, once every 2 years, it's like bam. And so yeah.
I actually get the same thing as a lead TI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, it builds up and tribe comes out against you sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. So, or actually, yeah, I tend to come out against the tribe because I feel like the
Ah, you
tribes
come out
are,
against the tribe. Okay.
but
All
yeah,
right.
I come out against the tribe. So like, cause the tribe's like doing their own thing, right? Like they're not hating on me. Like half the time they don't even know I'm there. And then I just like, boom, I just come at them. And it's like, whoa, where did this come from? It's like, I don't know either. So, but yeah.
Really interesting. So, so like, are you aware of your TI identity a little bit? Like,
Now I am, yeah,
yeah.
because like so I think because before I got typed, so I got typed like about 2 months ago, like 2 months and like a week.
Right.
I thought it was an
That's very
NITE,
specific. Two
right?
months and a
Yeah, like
week.
I actually remember this because
Yeah.
like I think yeah, because I posted about it last week, right? And
Right.
I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is like straight up like 2 months on the dot. Uh, but like yeah, when I got typed, you know, I was very confident I was an NITE, especially because like you know like the engineering.
Uh-huh.
Um, like also kind of like you said, like yeah, you know, I can communicate well, so I definitely don't have blast last, maybe not even third. Um, and so I didn't know I had TI. Like I thought I had FI, and I actually thought, yeah, I did think like maybe that's where it comes from, right? Like I have demon FI, the tribe is doing something, and like my values disagree with it. But
Uh-huh.
regardless whether it's FI or TI, like yeah, I did realize like I had these clashes, and I've been like starting to understand that like you know it's probably gonna be an issue for a very long time until I end up like just deciding, okay, here's the thing I want to do, and I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna start it, you know, and I'm gonna be in control of it because like the fact of the matter is, so far in my life, almost everything I've done, it's always been like someone else's thing, really, right? Like I didn't start the fraternity, I didn't start the dance team, I didn't, you know, like the project I worked on in grad school, like I didn't really start that. So you know, it's like all these things that like other people kind of started, and I just like joined. And
Right.
I realized like, okay, if I really feel strongly about something, right? Like this is an issue that's not gonna go away until like I'm in charge of something, and it really is me being the person who has the final say, because like you know I'm like the CEO or the executive director or whatever term there is, right? President, whatever. Uh, but yeah, so so I definitely did see that I was having this issue between like you know like DE first, right? Like tribe over self. Like I do
Uh-huh.
stuff for the tribe, and then I kind of like have these like small tidal waves about not agreeing with what the tribe is doing.
Right. Yeah. Because I guess I've seen someone here in our area do this. He's busting his ass all day for the tribe. He's doing so much for the tribe all the time, and then
Right.
like he's really just giving of himself all the time. And I think he's lead FE as well. And then like every so often, the tribe is like not on board with what he's doing, and it just causes a big tidal wave. It's like,
Yeah.
what the hell, man? I do so much for you. You can't do this little thing. Like,
Right.
dude.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's very true.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. It's like can't disagree with that. So
Right. Um, okay. I, so your NI, what kind of problems does your NI cause then for you? Like,
like demon and I
yeah, your demon
or
NI.
yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's like right. So I actually talked to Shannon about this. It's mostly like being surprised when things get boring. Because like, so she kind of pointed this out was that you know no matter what you do in life, right, it's never going to be exciting
All the time. Yeah.
all the time. And so I kind of do get, and it's very true actually, if I'm honest. Like you know, I'll do something and I'll get really excited about it. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be so much fun. And then yeah, I'll get bored. And like it happens so many times. Like you would think I would have picked up on the pattern by now. That like no matter what I do, it's gonna get boring at some point.
At some point.
Uh,
Yeah. and you got to
but I
stick
still
through it.
yeah, but yeah, right. And you got to stick through it. You know, and that's just life. But yeah, like I've had this thing of like, you know, when I'm bored, like I'll find something else. I mean, I might still do this same stuff, right? Like I'll still be in graduate school. I'll still be doing research, but then I'll just do stuff on the side to like,
Right.
and like it kind of meshes with it. You know, it kind of like fights with the research because you only have 24 hours in a day, and so like, so that's I think yeah, I kind of I've
So
had issues.
is that like a procrastination issue too, that you get distracted by something else and you're not able to do what you're supposed to be doing
Very much.
because it's
Yeah,
too
yeah, yeah, very
boring?
much so. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it's probably might also be related to like the try versus solve thing, where, like, well, yeah, when I was in high school, college, grad school, even nowadays, you know, like oftentimes, like I'll have a deadline, and I'll kind of like push stuff off to the last minute. I mean, I'll still get it done, but it's really like you kind of need to like force me to do it and be like, all right, you really got to do it now,
Yeah.
because you know you don't really have that much time left. Like for example, like yeah, like the electromagnetism class I was talking about.
Yeah.
So people were really scared about the midterms, right? And so they would like study for it like for 2 weeks. You know, starting 2 weeks before the midterm. You know, they'd be like studying every day, and I kept like putting it off, and I kept putting it off, and I kept putting it off until literally like it was like the midterm was at like 9 a.m. and I was like at like 7 p.m. the day before I was like, all right, let's get going, right? So I had like 10 hours, like and I would stay up, the entire night, and I would
Yeah.
study it, and I would crush the exam, which probably did not help me at all with like
Right.
trying to be more disciplined because like I was getting away with it.
Yeah.
And
I
yeah, and
I
that's
had the same thing. I was getting away with stuff like that too. Yeah.
yeah, right. And it definitely does not help you at all, like to like try to like be disciplined when you can get away with not being disciplined. Like
Right.
even recently, like oftentimes, like uh, you know, I remember like so I had all this data, and usually what I found interesting was that like people had a hard time like coming up with theories for it. And I don't really know why. Like maybe they wanted more data, maybe they weren't sure, but like I just remember one time, like you know, I've been doing some stuff for a couple of weeks, and I had like a group meeting with my professor like in like 4 hours, and I basically like in three and a half hours I just hashed out this entire theory on like what our data was, and he was like
Huh.
really impressed, and like it was actually good data. I actually published it too. It's like it's in my thesis, but
Cool.
it was one of those things where it's like man, like looking back at it, I'm just like yeah, you know that's really like cutting it very tight. Uh, you know, getting away with it, right? Really getting
Yeah.
away with not being disciplined. And like I also like kind of like think just talking about it now, like realizing like I wonder like if I could have got graduated faster, or if I could have done a lot more had I actually been disciplined and like you know been that productive like
Right.
consistently instead of, like
Right. But at the same time, you were using your SE more as
yeah,
well.
that's
Like,
right. Yeah.
so you were getting other things, like you were getting your dance thing, you were getting all that other stuff done. So
Right.
yeah.
That's
So
true.
I mean, it is a trade off. But yeah. And then
Yeah, that's
you would have been stuck to in civil engineering.
yeah, actually, that's true. Like,
Yeah.
probably would not have been fun, but or maybe it would have been. But like, no, you're right. It's like I would have been
Yeah.
stuck. And you know, it's yeah, like you said, it's a trade off because it's like I think maybe because like I have SC first because I'm still trying to like fully understand like what it all implies. Is that like you know when I was doing research, I was actually really sensitive to like the actual like data that we were getting. So maybe I had like an easier time like looking at all this data and being able to synthesize it because I'm just like
Uh-huh.
very sensitive to it all. And I'm like, yeah, I see all the data, I have it all. While like maybe my professor or someone else is just focusing on one part. Like I'm just like bouncing around like all these different experiments, like different data sets, and just being like, okay, I got it. I know how to like put it all together in one nice theory.
Right, in a
So
cohesive whole, yeah. So yeah, do you
yeah,
find that you're always looking for a cohesive whole that like
yeah.
everything sort of links in a point, all of the universe is one in some way?
Yes,
Like, do you see
very
that?
much so. Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. Like all the time. Like right now, I don't know if this is gonna last forever, but yeah, right now I'm very big and I have been for like the past year and a half, 2 years. The hero's journey, right?
Right.
So, which I think is also like a reason why like Dave and Shannon appealed to me. But like I found out about that. Oh man, what was it? It was like such a random thing. It was like so I was like it was like last year, like around April May time. You know, I was like I had like 3 months. Okay, I had like 2 months to write my thesis. Again, like another one of those stories where I actually had 6 months total to write my thesis, and I like smashed it out in the last 2 months that I really had before the deadline, right? So I was like writing up my thesis, and the years before in grad school, I've been reading books here, left, right. And I remember like this book by Ray Dalio. It's like, named Principles, and he talks about the hero's journey, and he talks about like Joseph Campbell. And like I was a little bit of an idiot because I confused Joseph Campbell with Joseph Conrad, who wrote like
Okay.
The Heart of Darkness, which is like a book about the Congo and Belgium,
Okay.
Belgium's like treatment about of black people in the Congo. So I was like, oh yeah, Joseph Conrad. Yeah, I read The Heart of Darkness. Didn't really like that book. Not gonna read like Joseph Campbell. Okay. Anyway, so I'd heard of this like hero's journey stuff, and then I don't know why, but like as I was writing my thesis one Friday, I kind of got done on schedule with like what I had to do that day. Because I did plan it for those 2 months. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do like every week, like chapter by chapter. And that I think is also because again I only had 2 months, so I was like, I really got to hit this every fucking week, or else I'm like in big trouble and I'm not gonna graduate on time. But one Friday, like it was nice out, and I really like going to the bookstore, and I ended up just going to the bookstore and just being like, and just like seeing that book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces by
Mhm.
Joseph Campbell. That's like he kind of popularized the hero's journey in
Yeah.
Western culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I picked up the book, basically read it, for the next 2 weeks as I was writing my thesis too. So that was kind of like what I did in my downtime. I
Right.
loved it. I started reading his other books as well. Like I'm actually going through his like Mask of Gods series, which are like 4 books. It's like Primitive, Oriental, Occidental, and Creative Mythology. It's like great books. Um, and like, yeah, it's like, I started using that to kind of like look at how the entire world works, where it's like, like, so the hero's journey is really about like you have the society or the world reality, and it's like, it starts off well, but it starts decaying at some point, right? So you come in as a hero and you regenerate it, and that's kind of like basically all of human history is basically like, what kind of reality is all about. It's like what life is all about. Uh, and so that
Yeah.
really appealed to me. And so like, yeah, I've kind of been looking at everything through that lens a bit.
Yeah. It's
So
like it's the basic story of growth and adaptation to hurdles that come in. And yeah.
right, exactly, yeah. So and it's
Yeah.
like, I loved it. I thought it was like a fantastic,
Yeah.
like what they call
So for
it.
you,
Yeah.
like that's uniting everything into a cohesive whole sort of thing.
Yeah, pretty much so. Like I'm kind of seeing it now as well, like in terms of so like, I work like, I'm doing some work in the blockchain space, right? And I find it super fascinating because what I see is like these kids who are like in their early 20s, and they're like inspired by this idea of like revamping the entire financial system a bit,
Uh-huh.
giving people more freedom to like with their money, with their assets. And so it's like a lot of these ideals, and it really does seem like, okay, like this is kind of coming from people seeing how the current financial system maybe is, like, all this stuff with like, the 99% Occupy Wall Street, like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
2000 financial crisis. And I kind of see, and I see it intuitively, or like in my intuitive view of it is, okay, you have this society, you have this system that's like decaying, that's like not really working anymore for most people. And then you end up with like kind of these like hero characters that are coming in and trying to change it, right?
Right.
And the hero's journey, which is a little bit gruesome, is that like the hero often tends to become the tyrant in the end, because like,
Yeah.
you change the system, and then your system becomes bad, right?
Yeah.
And so someone else has to come in and change that system, and so it's like
Right.
this cycle of a continuous like regeneration, debt, thing. So like, yeah,
Yeah.
so but like, that's like one example, and it's like I have tons of more, but like, yeah, it really does. I do see it everywhere basically
So you're
now.
seeing everything in that lens at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
pretty much so.
Cool. Um, do you have anything that you want to promote or anything that you want to say about your type maybe to people?
Yeah, I think one thing is like I was just really surprised because like, there is a stereotype, right, of like, okay, at least for me, right, like I had done a little bit of the Myers-Briggs stuff, and so like there's the kind of the stereotype of like, this is what an NT is, this is what an SF is, this is what an
Right.
ST is, NF. And so for me to be told like, oh, you're an SF, I was like, no way, no
Right.
way. you know, because I got the engineering, I got the PhD stuff, you know, like how is that possible? But it is this thing about like, you got to be careful not to focus on like your first impressions, right? Even
Yeah.
of yourself, right? If you say like, well, I see myself as a engineering nerd, and it's kind of funny because like now that I think about it, it's like, yeah, it's kind of what David Shannon said, like, you know, the SS see themselves as that, and
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
way around.
You know what's really
Um,
funny? Do you know Thomas Aylott? Aylott? I don't know how to say his last name.
yeah. I've seen him
Yeah.
on the Facebook.
Yeah. So he also thought he was NT as well. And
Right. Yeah.
he's
Right.
FESE. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's in programming and he's a pretty nerdy guy too. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, if you go off the stereotypes, it's really easy to just mistype, right? Like if you
Yeah.
just look at someone like first impression, like, oh, this dude has to be this based on just how like the work he does, the way he looks. But then yeah, like when you start talking to them, when you see their patterns, right?
Mhm.
Not so much what they do, but how they do it. If that makes sense. So like for example, it's like, yeah, okay, sure. I was an engineer, I was in grad school, right? I was in electrical engineering. So if you just focus on that, you can be like, oh, this dude's clearly an NT, does all this like abstract shit. But
Right.
then if you look at like how I'm really doing these things, I'm like, well, okay, in college, I switched my major like really fast. And then I was doing like 5 other things like every single year in college
Yeah.
outside of my major. The same thing in grad school, right? Like I was always consistently doing like 10 different things. Then you start realizing, okay, sure, like he might be an engineer, but like the pattern is more like of a gatherer really than an organizer,
Yeah.
right? And I think like when you start looking for that stuff, like at least for me, it's like helped me a lot with like starting to like appreciate how to actually type properly.
Yeah.
Because definitely I see a lot of people, right? Like they come into the Facebook group and they're pretty new and they're like, well, I don't think this is right because like I've been doing this stuff for like 2 weeks, right? Or
Yeah.
like I'm not even really part of the video class, but I know what I'm talking about because of X, Y, and Z. So I do think it's like, yeah, it's probably like important, at least for me, maybe also for other people to like yeah, don't look at the stereotypes, right? Because you might have an NT who's actually like I don't know who was a cheerleader in high school, right? Like very SF stereotype, right? Or like yeah, NTs who are like engineers who are actually SF. So it's like it can be the
Yeah.
case. You end up with like people who are doing one type of work, and it's like their type is really like the complete opposite of what you would expect.
Yeah. Cool, man.
So,
I have 3 quick questions. Let's try to keep them short. They kept coming up during the interview and I kept forgetting them. So the first one, yeah, the first one is one that came up at the end here. I'm wondering about your SE. Are you looking for beauty around you? Are you looking for aesthetic? Is that important to you?
Yes. So one thing I really like doing is dressing well, and so I'm very picky about the clothes I wear. And I actually do wear relatively expensive shoes and suits, and like it's something like I was talking to Shannon about too, because I started learning a lot from like the YouTube like style guys, right?
Really? Wow. Okay.
And I mean, like, yeah, when I was like younger, I didn't have money, so I kind of had to like, especially when I was in grad school, too, I really didn't have any money, so I kind of had to like,
Improvise.
you know, like yeah, I would watch videos of like how to like dress well on a budget. But then like as I got older and I made more money, I was like, dude, like again, honestly, like it's like if you want to have like the nicest stuff, it's gonna cost money. Like quality costs money. In fashion and style, and so that's the one thing I actually do focus on a lot.
So that's your SF there, at least.
Yeah, actually, very. So yeah.
Cool. The other thing I wanted to ask: do you take guesses? Do you jump to conclusions, or is that something that just you don't ever do?
I do. So yeah, I do.
Do you do it too much, or not enough, or?
I think not enough actually. So
Yeah.
I do it sometimes, and obviously, like you know, like yeah, you know, sometimes you get excited, you see 2 data points, and you extrapolate. And sometimes I think that's just because I'm like excited. That I think is. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I was gonna say, like, when you do it, does it kick you in the ass and be like, "Don't do this again"?
Yeah.
Like you were wrong.
Yeah, a lot of times. A lot of it actually, I think, it actually comes from like the feminine FE. Like you know, when I'm in a situation that and like there's good vibes, like I'll extrapolate so hard. Like, oh, this is gonna be good forever.
Right. Yeah.
And obviously, like it doesn't. Like things go wrong. Like you know, it's not funny anymore. So in that case, in that sense, I do. But other times, like yeah, there are probably other times, and I'm having a hard time thinking of any where I'm like, yeah, you know, maybe I should like uh, take a guess, right, and like
Hmm.
see what happens. Like, you know, if I'm like I do something new, like take a guess what's gonna happen. Yeah, you're probably gonna get bored in like 2 3 months, right? Like you're gonna hit that boring phase at some point, which always
Yeah.
every single time it surprises me. Every single time I'm like, man, I forget, man, shit, I can't believe this got boring. So
Yeah. Then the last question was I wanted to go back to your TI really quick, and talk about your identity. Um, have you had like this identity crisis in the past? Have you, like, who am I sort of thing, and or is it still
yeah,
going on? Or
right. Yeah, I didn't really talk much about it in this interview, but very much so. So part of it is like, so there's actually not that many. Like I'll try to keep it quick, short. There's not that many Indian people here in Belgium, right? So I
right?
actually grew up going to a school where I was basically one out of like 4 or 5 Indian kids. Only one in my year. Everyone else was white, which is fine. Like, you know, I get along with people. I think. But it
Right.
was like, yeah, cultural thing where I was like, you know, I was like trying to find people who were like still more similar to me. So, and I was like, I think one of the reasons I went to the U.S. because I knew there were like more Indian people there, and so
Yeah.
I really like, you know, interacted a lot more with Indians in the U.S. and other groups. And like,
Uh-huh.
you know, I was like part of the like the dance team was actually an Indian dance team. The
Oh,
fraternity
okay,
has
cool.
predominantly Indian people, right? So like hang out a lot with these like Indian American kids
Yeah.
or you know some Asian American kids, like depending on you know
How you define
how
it?
they
Yeah.
call them. What's up?
Yeah, yeah. Depending on how you define them, yeah, how you call them, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Exactly. And but like yeah, there was often this like actually very often this question of like man, do I even belong here? Because like I'm actually not like because I'm not American. Like the Indians in Belgium are like much more conservative than the Indians in America. Like there's
Yeah.
very clear differences between how like the two groups actually interact and behave. Like for example, here, like you know, most of the people here, you know, by the time they're like 23, 24, probably already have like arranged marriage. You know, like very conservative. And in the U.S., they like all date, right? So it's like very different. And so like yeah, I've had issues with that. Like you know, kind of like can I really consider myself part of the
Uh-huh.
Indian American community? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I can. I don't think I can. You know, like I also disagree very often with them, like on
Right.
politics, other issues. So it's like it's kind of been yeah, it's been tough actually sometimes.
You're giving me a whole lot of SF spectrum here, like the whole thing.
Okay.
You're Yeah, it's like a lot of
Yeah.
SE and FE, like the whole spectrum. Yeah, it's pretty
Right.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what David Shannon said too. Like when I was telling them like in my typing video, like here's when I had a tough time when I was in grad school. And I wasn't, and like, you know, like my interactions with the Indian American community, they were like, yeah, that's a lot of FE. So
Yeah.
I was
And
like, okay,
yeah, FESE, yeah, for sure.
right, yeah.
But like, so from looking at your FESE, do you think that would have solved your TI identity issue, or like that just was emptiness?
I think it's something I kind of have to figure out. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, like, you know, like I'm not a snowflake, right? I'm not special, but I do have to figure out like,
Where
who
you
do I
fit
want
in.
to, yeah, where do I fit in? Right. And so like, I don't know if this is going to change in a year because like, hey, you know, SE, not NI. But like my kind of my plan was actually to like possibly like move to London for a couple of reasons. So London is like it's like okay, I don't know if you've been there or like you've been to the UK, but okay, the UK is basically America. I don't care what anyone says. Like if you live
Okay.
in like Europe proper and you go to London, it's like going to an American city. And
Okay.
so I was there a couple of weeks ago. I loved it. I was like super excited, and I was like, I can see myself living in London. The Indians there, from what I can tell, are slightly different. They're a little bit closer to the Indians in Belgium. But on top of that, it's only like a 3 hour train ride away. So like I can go home, I can come home like really quickly, really easily on the weekends, which
Yeah.
wasn't really the case in the US. In the US, it was like, I'm on the East Coast. I want to go home. It's like an 8 10 hour flight. It's pretty expensive,
Yeah.
right? So I'm like, okay, you know, I kind of get some of that American culture, which I actually did like, but I can be closer to home. There's actually like a lot of the kids, a lot of the Indians, like my generation, from Belgium, actually live in London or the UK. So there's actually very few of us that actually went to the US. It seems like most of them just went to the UK. And so I'm like, okay, you know that I can kind of see myself doing. And like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still out. Like I'm like 29 years old. So,
Oh, you're
but yeah, I'm
still
still
young. You're still young. Yeah.
yeah, right. So I'm still trying to figure out like, okay, you know, like
Yeah,
Like,
but
yeah,
like
how do I
what I'm
solve
seeing as like a lead TI, I'm seeing that this is what you're doing. You're still looking at the spectrum. You're like, most of them do this, they do that, they do
right,
that.
right,
And the question is you. What about you,
right,
man?
exactly. Yeah,
You
okay,
gotta,
that's true. That's true. I got to figure out what I want to do. That's very true. So,
yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah. So we'll sign off because this is getting a little long, but
sure,
awesome. Thank
sounds
you
good.
so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Have
Appreciate
a good
it.
one. Good luck with
Yeah,
everything.
thanks. Bye.